Hello and welcome to this Project in a Box video. In this session we're going to be having a look at the new version 5.2. We've already done an overview set of slides and introduction to the new functionality. This is taking you through it in detail. So in this session we're going to be having a look at history collection and trend analysis. So as we covered in the last one, the system automatically now collects changes to properties at the project level, creating a history of them, and allows you a number of ways of charting and reporting on that content. So let's go and have a look at that in action. So here I am in my Windows application. We can have a look at this exactly the same in the browser as well. And you'll see we've got a new menu item up here, which is trend analysis. And actually the analysis is the first you see of this, because this just happens for you automatically. Every time you update a property in the project, and that's the sort of project property set, and those things can come from lots of different areas. There are the standard properties that you might type in, like which department is and who the project manager is and things of that type. You decide those, and we call those the system project properties. We also have what we call plan properties. They're created for you automatically from the content in your project controls. You'll plan your risk and issues, things like the total number of overdue risks, the number of open tasks, the percentage completed of the project, things of that type, automatically created for you as project properties. And then also things that you bring from Excel. So you might have Excel templates, benefits, finances, health and safety data, etc. Every time they're updated, we can bring data in and store that as properties in the system. And that's going to accumulate for you over a period of time to give you your set of properties and the history, therefore, for them. So every time that changes, when you check in a new version of the plan, it's got slightly different data, it'll move that data along, storing the previous versions, the value in the date, time, and then the new one as well. So it just happens automatically. When I come in here and look at trend analysis, I can choose one of two different types, project or portfolio. So let's have a look at the project one first. And it works like many of our other forms do. It runs using a view. So this is the appropriate output here for the view that I'd last loaded. It obviously remembers what you last used, which was a status history chart. And this is showing me the status of this project for the period of time going backwards. So we've got December 18 up here, and then we've got it was green, on track for a few months, then we had some exception, we had some on track before that. The other contributory, if you like, statuses that come in that we collect, benefits, finances, plan, risk and issue, they were going through various other approaches from which the project manager would have determined what the overall project status was. But it's tracked that back over time, and we're seeing the outworkings of that here, and we can use this chart to see that for a range of different types of data. So if I come to load view here, you'll see you get a standard set of pre-configured views available for you. The one we've just been looking at was the status block, but we can come and look at, for example, risk and issue trends. That's quite a good one. Risk trends. Oh, so we've got timeline here. That's showing us the number of risks against the number of open risks. We can come and find risk and issue stats. I think that's what I was looking for, which is showing me over a period of time the number of risks in the project, which is often going up, and the number of open risks, which is going up and then often coming down again because we're dealing with a number of them. And same with issues. We've got the number of issues, which is coming up, and the number of open issues because we're closing some as we go along. So it's giving us a track over time of how that has developed, rather than just looking at the number now. We can see whether the trend is upwards or downwards, for example. And obviously, to get this, you've got a lot of sophistication and a lot of complexity in how you might set up charts of this type, but you can set all that up by editing it here, or you can come and just pick one from here. So if we go and pick finance timeline, again we've got the budget cost of the project, the progress cost of the project, and the actual cost of the project, as these ones are brought out from the plan based on the roll-up data coming from tasks and resource allocations to tasks and actual time booked against them. But you'll see here it's giving us that data, and we can see how that's progressed over time. Now most of these are set up to run on a year's cycle, but they don't have to be like that. And in fact, you can have all sorts of different things. So let's have a little poke around inside the form and see how they work. Like I say, the idea here is that most users will just pick the standard ones. It's your senior, advanced, super user type people that might come in and configure new ones for you. So this form allows us to, in the general area, set up our sort of standard formats, etc., give it a description, and choose what we want to run this on. So this is producing a timeline chart. The other one earlier would have been producing a status history. There's a value panel as well, which I'm going to show you in a minute. And you can decide how you want this structuring and ordering within the data set, because when we look at portfolios, of course, we might order this firstly by property or secondly or by project, if there's multiple project property combinations. Then we come to the properties table here, and so these are the properties we want to display, and you'll see here I'm choosing, I've got the 3 and I've chosen them from my list of overall properties using the browse facility, and I've decided what I want the line to look like, the size, the marker type, whether it's a solid line or dashed, etc. And we can see that information there for the 3 properties we've selected. We then have data options, and this is deciding what happens when the data is not uniform. So you'd like to think everybody updates their data once a week or once a month, but in practice that's often not the case. And so we need to be able to know how to deal with unusual data. So for example, if the status was changed twice in the month, which one do you use, the first one or the last one? Well, in this case we're using the last item where there are multiple points in the period, so we can control that. And sometimes you might not update the status in the month, so what do we do then? Well, if that's the case, we take the last value that we had set. So if no value is yet set in the project, it shows as blank until one is set, and then sometimes that value might not be changing, and actually that's often what you want, because you know, for example, you set the budget for the project, you don't go and reset it every month. It sticks, it's baselined if you like, it sticks until it needs to change again. Perhaps it never needs to change. But when you chart that, you'd like to see that point running consistently. In fact, as exactly we did here, this would have been set perhaps somewhere earlier than this, and it doesn't change until it actually changes up here. And it may never change, it may only be set as one point, but it does continue to show you, because it's binning that data, the point in the period, because that's really useful. And certainly if you look at a table of that data, you want to see that information. And in fact, I'm going to show you in a second what happens when we switch that data off. So rather than binning it on monthly, if I go to none like that and we apply that, now we see the actual data points that we have, and they're not necessarily entirely uniform. Many of them are, but some of them aren't. We had a couple of points in October here, and nothing since then. The progress cost has changed considerably differently, and the budget cost, of course, like I say, was set at the beginning of the project, which is earlier than that, outside our defined time period, so we wouldn't see it. So you get a very scrappy looking chart, and so it's the sophistication of it that enables you to bin these things. So we were binning monthly, but you'll see we can obviously bin different periods like that, that enables that to actually generate what's quite a sophisticated looking output from what is often pretty chaotic sort of data. That's even with the best, most mature organisation in the world, where data is often a bit chaotic in terms of the way it's updated. Like, you can't always guarantee that people update things on the last day of every month, because it might be a Sunday, for example. So this is about sorting out that, your time period that you want to display. That can be absolute or relative, so we're running a number of periods, a number of months back from today. And then I'm running this to a timeline chart. So this is defining my timeline chart. I could have a timeline or a time bar, and I'm deciding the size of that, both for showing in HTML and then also for scaling into Word. Do I want a key? Do I want a title? Do I want to force a certain font size, etc.? And then what am I doing about my axes? So I'm running in an x-axis using 1 month intervals. Now I could set this to 0, and then that would auto interval it. So 0 is always auto. But I might not want to do that, because it might come out it might divide it into tens, and I've got 12 months here. So I've chosen how to do that, but you may not want to do that. Sometimes you leave it on auto. And the same with the y-axis. So we're telling it it's a numeric type of data, because the sort of data we're plotting here could be numbers, it could be values, financial values, it could be dates, it could actually be content which has a value map. What I mean by that is status entries or something like that, or words or departments, and you want them to appear differently on that chart. So this can do all sorts of different things with your data. And again, we can set, so I'm always making it go from a set minimum of 0, and then it's auto maxing, so depending on the size of the project finances, but it will show from 0. So you don't get one of those annoying charts that starts at 500,000 and it looks like it's really cheap, but it's you're not seeing most of that data underneath. So all those options to set that up, and for different types of charts you'll see different sorts of data options in here. So if we come back and we'll just put that back to how it was, and then we load a different one up to have a look. We'll have a look at that one that we were looking at a second ago, which was the status block, and that's a status history chart here. So when we edit this view, we'll see that it was running using status history here. So here it chooses the properties that you've chosen here, and again you can choose the binning of those, etc. Same idea. We're not interested in timeline chart though, status history chart here. So here we choose again whether we want keys and titles and things like that. We can choose the direction that the progress is going to be displayed in, left or right. And then we choose how big we want all the blocks to be. So how big is each cell going to be, how high, how wide, etc. How are we going to space these things, how big are we going to make it again for display purposes. So we can set all that up, and it uses the colours that were back here in properties. So for each of these properties we have a value map. So this is my value map for that property, and it knows which colour to use in that chart depending on the entry that's relevant for that month. So you specify all this, none of this is left to chance, but of course you don't want to have to set all these things up again and again, and so things like these value maps are saved favourites that you can reload and reuse. You create a new one, you reload it and reuse it again, and that's the case with these whole charts. You can create a copy of this and modify it to match some other requirement that you need. And in fact that's how most of these have been created. So that's some very common types on the project using these status charts and the timeline being obviously the most common one. Let's have a look at a couple of other different variations. So I've got change impact costs here. This one's using a bar type chart, and it's showing me the change impact costs coming through from the issue register in Planner. And I can see how that's progressed over time. Some things we often want to see as a bar rather than a timeline, and in particular we're dropping these into a report, which we're going to have a look at in the next session, seeing how those display. So that's project level properties, most of them as a history or trend analysis. Let's come and have a look at the portfolio as well. So the portfolio is obviously going to work on the current portfolio. And here we've got a slightly more complex situation because we might have a lot of lines and a lot of projects being shown. So this one is looking at issues by the look of it, total issues and open issues, and they're paired up. So the green line, we've got the solid line is the total issues, and the dashed line is the open issues. And we've got obviously that other project here and some others jumping around here. We can set on the table if we want to, so we can see all that data in detail. In fact, we'll go and do that here. So it uses exactly the same views. I'll just switch table on as well. It uses exactly the same views, so you can get one you've set up for a project and you can drop it on a portfolio, and then you'll get those lines appearing for all the different projects. Of course, that can be a bit overwhelming if there's a lot of data in there really quite quickly, a lot of projects or any number of properties, because you'll multiply it quite quickly. We are showing that, and here this comes into its own, this ordering thing. So here we're going the order by project and then series. So we get plan issues, plan open issues for project A, then plan issues, plan open issues for project B. And what that means is we can pick up some useful color codings for that. And that's done over here in series display. You see we've got paired color options. So this is supporting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 data sets, and then it'll go through and start randomizing them. You can of course set it up, save it with many more if you want to. And so the first couple of lines that come out will have a solid line which will be the total number of issues, and then a dashed line, the open number of issues for project A, and then we'll get project B, and then project C, and project D, etc. So that ordering allows us to do that, and this format can then be used, copied and saved for any other pair of properties from the same project, and you'll get that grouping coming through in a nice way. Other than that, it's the same as it was before, and often we're using pretty similar data options. Once you get into the pattern of what you want, like monthly and last period or previous period, etc., you'll often stick with these. You don't have to, but that's often the case. So that's that one, and here we've got a table now showing for it. Properties at the project level and the portfolio level with history, and like I say, you just see the outworking here because it all happens behind the scenes automatically, the collection of that data. It's about analysing it. We've got a whole new set of reports that pick up and use these. I'm just going to show you one of those here, which is the new annual review. You see it's using a lot of trend analysis elements, but it's still using some of the other standard elements as well. And this is going to do a review of this project and drop it out to Word for me. The sort of thing you might do as a stage gate review when you close down a project, or on an annual basis. Some long-running projects and programs, people do have annual type reviews of projects, and that's what this is aimed at. So as that loads up in Word, we'll see a whole range of these things we've just been talking about coming through, and then we're going to go off and have a look at the last one of those in the value panel as well. So we've got a good mix here of some of the standard properties coming through. We've got our status block at the top. We've got some of those timelines we were looking at, and like I say, they vary. Sometimes they're tracking numbers, so this is obviously tracking finances and benefits here. We've got our benefit budget value and the benefit delivered against that. Here we're tracking percentage completes in terms of plan information, and here we're tracking dates against dates. So this is the milestone for completion of the project. It was set as a baseline back here, sometime back here probably. It was changed at some point during the project life cycle in March, and then it's been the same since, but we can see that the predicted end date of the project, which we calculate for you based on the plan, has been moving, unfortunately, in the wrong direction. But we can see how that's happened over a period of time in that data. So we're tracking lots of different things on the left-hand side here. We've got a milestone timeline there, a list of overdue tasks. They're fairly conventional things. Here's our risk and issue view. Obviously, this is going back to the beginning of the project here, all the way back to April 17. And then we're showing some risk and issue information for that coming from the other sorts of analysis and those bar charts we saw earlier. So that's quite a varied sort of report, bringing lots of different data out, some of it historical in nature, some of it about the current information, the current situation, and displaying all that in a single report for you. And producing that really quite quickly, because all, of course, that history data is sat in the database. It's really easy to get at and manipulate and produce outputs for. I wanted to just show you one other aspect of this history, which is and trend analysis, which is very nicely displayed on our new Scrum method. We're going to do this more detail in the next video as well, but I'm just going to come to the daily Scrum report here, which is going away and getting data from this project about its current performance, and it's following the format that Scrum meetings often follow. So just laying that out nicely for you to work through. It's talking about the current sprint and how the activities are going within that. And so what we can see here is a mixture of things again, some standard properties, some outputs from our spreadsheet, product backlog, but these are the particular things we're interested in here, these value panes as we call them, and these allow you to specify a property. It's a single property from a project, and it can compare, if you want to, the current value with the previous value, again based on your time periods, or it can just show the current value, and it can give a comment and a header and a size of block and a color. So you can create these really nice panes that you can just drop into your reports and use where you want to. They of course can be produced into that analysis window we saw earlier, but they look really good dropped into reports like this and merged in with other sorts of content that we'd be producing as standard like that. So those are the three main types: the timeline, the status block, and this value panel, running on the history data that's already been collected for you in the system. And exactly the same thing applies, of course, when we go and look at our browser interface. So we can come to our browser here and we can come and select one of our projects again. In fact, let's do the same one we were just looking at, and we could do our Scrum report again and see that same value panel information being created for us into our saved report. And of course we can also go and run our analysis at the project and portfolio levels as well from here. So here's our report. Will look exactly the same as it did, apart from it's of course into HTML initially here, and then, like I say, the trend analysis over here in the menu, and we've got the different things. So I'm running a status block here, but I could switch that to being a burn rate like that, and that's going to give me, that's a value panel, that one. So like I say, you can do all the different things, same things here, just like in all the other parts of the system. The browser interface is about using the pre-saved stuff. So here I'm not opening up and editing and creating my own new analyses. I'm just using pre-configured saved ones, but I can get them immediately and on any device. If I want a new one in here, I'd go back to the Windows application, define a new one, save it, and it will then appear in this list here. So that is taking you through history and trend analysis. Like I say, the assembly of that data, which is automatic, the then way of analysing that and then projecting that out into reports. In the next session, we're going to be looking at that new pack of standard reports and digging a bit deeper into the special new practical Scrum method. And then the last session, we're going to look at integration extensions and two-factor authentication. Hope you found that interesting and you're interested in watching the next videos as well. If you've got any further questions, just drop us an email and we'll be delighted to help you out with that. Thank you very much.